Welcome everyone to WorkSafe ACT's breakfast series. This is the fifth in our series, and we're focusing on different industries and the challenges that are posed within the work health and safety environment. And today it is hospitality and retail, the sector. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Auntie Violet to the stage for her welcome to country. Please give her a big warm round of applause. We're all up early.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here once again, this early in the morning. But guess what? I bet you can't guess. I've had another great-grandchild. And guess how many that is? Bet you can't guess. Number 30. 24 grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren. And Clayton, his name is, so it's another male. But he's beautiful. But I've worked in retail many, many years ago, and that was many years ago because I'll be 70 soon and I don't want to be 70. But I lived on a little Aboriginal reserve and my husband passed on. He had a massive heart attack playing footy on the footy field at 33. So he left me with 4 young children, which my eldest was 12, my youngest was 3. And I wanted to buy a little car. So I used to travel 180 k's a day to be a checkout check at Benson to save up for this little bluebird. And you know what? I did, but I also worked in retail I was the produce second in charge at Woolworths in Queanbeyan, and so I went from one job to a second job. And retail is, if you want respect from me, you give me respect back. Because I know, and it's probably still the same, I see in people that they think they have a right to abuse the person that is serving you. It's not on. It's not on. You know, they're like us to make a living, to feed their family, to pay the bills. So that's what I say, respect deserves respect. So we all need to remind ourselves of that, and safety, because I just look at our young people that are working at McDonald's and KFC and the amount of people abuse they get sometimes from people that either going through the drive-through or going into the shop itself. So I always remind people, you know, listen, that's only they're young people. You know, have a bit of respect. Put yourselves in, if you want your child to, you know, put up an abuse like that. So it is my pleasure, but I'd like to acknowledge our Commissioner, Work Health and Safety Commissioner, Jacqui Agius, Minister Gentleman, and I wish you all the best for the next election in October. But I'm a bit scared. Did you see what happened up in Northern Territory? Oh my God. And all you beautiful people here. So I'd like to pay my respects to my elders, past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any First Nations people here this morning, but I'd also like to acknowledge the non-Indigenous people in the room as well. And I only say this in Canberra, so you've probably heard me say this over and over again. I'm like a broken record. In keeping in the general spirit of friendship and reconciliation, it gives me great pleasure once again to welcome you to the land of the Ngunnawal people. And on behalf of my family and the other Ngunnawal families, I say welcome, welcome. And hopefully in February, and if you can get a ticket, I'm having a big concert on the 16th of February, and watch this space, because it's a healing process for us as non-Indigenous people and First Nations people to move forward, because I said I've got 30 grannies. I'm really concerned about my great-grandchildren. We need to move forward and together and make a decisions. I don't want you to walk me behind me. I don't want you to walk in front of me. I want you to walk beside me in reconciliation. Thank you all so much. Enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Violet. Auntie Violet always shares such personal experiences, and I think that highlights why we're here, because it is so personal. Everyone's work health and safety is so personal. And Auntie Violet, I'm very keen to hear more. You gave us a tease about February, because you've done more for reconciliation at all of these events by sharing that, but we'll follow you up. 30 grannies. My name's Lish Fayer. I work for the ABC, but over the course of these work health safety breakfasts, I've learnt so much. I've learnt even about the word psychosocial. I never knew this was one of the risks, and I, like Auntie Violet, was in hospitality from the age of, I think, about 14. I worked in nursing home kitchens, then I worked at the Jollymont Bistro, and then I worked at Parliament House in the kitchens up there, checking my bevy of knives through every morning as I'd head into the kitchen, which was a tough environment. And then I cooked my way around as I travelled. And then I finally, in the end, got terrible dermatitis, so I couldn't cook anymore. I wanted to work in kitchens all my life, and I couldn't, so then I had to talk now for a living, which doesn't give me dermatitis, but there's that. But I totally appreciate every single thing that you all do, whether you're at the front line of the checkout and in retail, or you're in the back of house in the kitchens, or the front of house. It's such an incredible environment to work in. Stressful, yes, and so much serving everyone else before yourself. But so today, when we're looking at hospitality and retail sector, we're going to be talking about not necessarily the physical risks that you are no doubt well aware of, the risks that you can see, but it's more the psychosocial risks, the risks that aren't often discussed. And I think still I'd be keen to tease this out throughout the morning, whether they're still a bit taboo, those psychosocial risks, which you will get a good grasp of what they are and how we can manage them. But I know for many of you, early mornings are very familiar territory, but on the other side of the spectrum, you might have got to bed at midnight or beyond, and so early mornings. Anyone up this morning who did get to bed late last night because you're working in the business? Yeah. See, this is the role of the retail hospitality sector, all hours. So the idea of these breakfasts is to raise awareness of OH&S, but also it's breakfast. So throughout the speeches and our panel discussion today, please eat. I want the sound of cutlery. I want you can get up, go out and get yourself another cup of tea and coffee. Eat the entire fruit platter, because it's not very often that adults get fruit cut up for them. No one leaves the building without it. Now, we are recording this for future information, so please, if you don't want your face recorded, please come up and see us in the break, and we'll make sure that you are not included in the recording. And you're also going to be exposed to some graphic content as well that may cause you some concern. So again, please feel free to let us know, one of the work health safety staff on the floor, or just get up and look after your own mental health around that. So let's kick it off this morning. We have three wonderful guests with us. And while they are speaking, please just take into account there is going to be a lot of time for questions as well. So any questions you have, please just take note of it and you can put it to them during the panel discussion. Our first speaker for this morning is Jacqui Agius, now the Work Health Safety Commissioner and Labour High Licence Commissioner. She's the host for these breakfasts. Now, she comes with a wealth of experience in workplace health and safety, invaluable expertise in the discussions around it, and very open to all these discussions. So please give Jacqui a warm welcome to the stage.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. While I was gardening on the weekend in the most beautiful Canberra sunshine, I thought I'm so lucky to live on Ngunnawal country. That was until I remembered that in Canberra we can't plant our tomatoes until Melbourne Cup Day. And I thought, yes, beautiful sunshine of the weekend is going to turn into some cold weather again shortly. Sure enough, yesterday we had that little bit of cold snap in Canberra. I'd also like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as the traditional custodians of Canberra and its regions, and I proudly acknowledge their continuing connection to the land and to our community. I also acknowledge any other families or people with connections to the ACT in our regions, and I extend that acknowledgement to all First Nations people present this morning. Our industry breakfasts have been a bit of a hit, attracting many different people from different industries, and in fact the last month's one on construction we had about 150 people attend, which was a great breakfast and also made for some interesting discussion. And of course, why wouldn't our industry breakfasts be a hit? I mean, they're free. My Maltese nunna would say, and Frank will get this, for free, ta! And we would all laugh, just like you did. But of course, it's wonderful to come to a free breakfast. But what's even more wonderful about our breakfasts is that we're here this morning because we're committed to safety. We're committed to safe workplaces in all workplaces for all workers. Can I just have and there will be some people in the room who have continued to work in retail or hospitality their entire lives, but can I have a show of hands in the room of anybody who started working in hospitality or retail but then went on to another job? So more than 50% of the room. And that would have been when you were young, probably going through high school, probably going through university, and certainly that was me. I worked in retail and hospitality when I was in high school, and also when I was in university I worked in hospitality. Auntie Violet, I'd like to thank you for your welcome to country. I'd like to acknowledge Minister Gentleman who is with us this morning and who has been to every one of our breakfasts. Thank you, Minister. We appreciate your support. I also want to thank Lish Freya for emceeing and mention that sometimes I feel like Lish in the morning is better than a Barocca. Lish has kindly emceed all of our breakfasts and will be continuing to MC those, so thank you so much, Lish. Thanks also to Amy from MV Law and James from Coles, who will share their expertise with us, and to Frank and the team at WorkSafe. Yet again, an amazing breakfast, and they do this once a month. So this work to put on today happens every month in Frank's team, as well as all of the other work they do. I'm going to take you through a little bit of data that we've gathered at WorkSafe in relation to hospitality, but before I do that, I want to talk about psychosocial hazards. Workplace safety hazards in the retail and hospitality sector are both physical and psychosocial. They range from trips, slips and falls and electrical hazards to workplace violence and aggression. And this morning, I'm going to focus a little bit on psychosocial hazards. Psychological health and safety is not the same as mental health. Psychosocial safety is the way in which a workplace prevents psychological harm to its workers. It's things like high job demands, such as high workloads, lack of job control or role ambiguity, low job resources, such as not having supervisors present to help people, and not having worker support, and also lack of consultation. It can also be a poor physical environment, so a lack of suitable amenities, or a badly maintained or unpleasant workplaces and conditions. And it can be either involvement with or exposure to traumatic events and materials. Where workers are exposed repeatedly to uncontrolled psychosocial hazards, they can become stressed and burnt out, and also fatigued. I want to make the point that some stress is not necessarily a problem. In fact, for some people, stress can act as a motivator. However, if it's prolonged, steady stress over a long period of time, then that is where we have a problem that could result in a psychological injury. And exposure to uncontrolled psychosocial hazards can significantly impact a worker, and they can suffer from both physical or psychological injury. So physically, we see things like headaches, insomnia, fatigue, indigestion, high blood pressure, hair loss, and loss of appetite. They're some of the physical things that we might see. And emotionally, we might see things like irritability, lack of concentration, anxiety, depression, loss of confidence, low morale. Behaviourally, we might see poor work performance, workplace incidents, and poor relationship interactions in the workplace. So if there are psychosocial hazards, one of the things that workers will often complain about is the way they're being treated, or the way that they may be being bullied. And psychological harm can be seen through illnesses and injuries that we commonly recognise, such as anxiety, depression, fatigue, post-traumatic stress disorder, and sleep disorders. I was wondering if I can also use the hand thing another time and get a show of hands for those who have seen or experienced psychosocial hazards or their impacts while they have worked in retail and hospitality. Not as many as I thought. I thought we'd see a few more than that. Many years ago, I was sitting at a cafe with my partner, and I witnessed a young woman bring out a takeaway cup of coffee and a bag of food to a taxi driver. And I knew it was a taxi driver because they had their uniform on. And I witnessed the middle-aged taxi driver say to the young woman, "You look beautiful again tonight." The taxi driver was middle-aged, and this woman was under 20, quite a young woman. And he then said to her, "When are you going to come out with me? When are we going to have that date?" And as the woman walked past me, I said, "You don't have to put up with that. That's not okay." And she said, "It happens every night. Every night, and I've spoken to my boss, and my boss makes me bring it out to him every night because he asks for me." And so when I went to pay my bill, I politely told her boss what I thought of that. At least I tried to be polite. These types of incidents happen all of the time. We know it's a serious problem. Many of us have experienced it, we've heard it, we've heard it from our friends and our family, and we've seen it in the media. It's so common that it's a trope of pop culture. The chef and waiters living in a state of panic, or someone harassing a retail worker. Sound familiar? And this is where it gets interesting, because when we look at workers' compensation data for our industries where you expect psychosocial hazards to be prominent, such as healthcare or education, We see psychosocial hazards right up there as a major mechanism behind workers' compensation claims. But when we look at the top mechanisms for workers' compensation claims in retail and hospitality, psychosocial claims are uncommon. In the accommodation and food industry, food services industry, psychosocial claims are often so low that they don't even come into the data that we're collecting. The highest workers' accepted claims in both of those industries are for muscular stress. And I ask the question, why is it? Why is this the case? At WorkSafe, we believe that one of the reasons is the prevalence of vulnerable workers in retail and hospitality. So we see in retail and hospitality high rates of casual and part-time employment, a young and often inexperienced workforce. For example, the food industry is 45% aged under 25. And there is a significant amount of people who are culturally and linguistically diverse in the retail and food services industry. We know that vulnerable workers are less likely to report work health and safety concerns, and for a number of reasons. One, they fear that they're going to lose their jobs, they don't want to draw attention to themselves, or they just lack the awareness about their rights. And this is compounded by what we know about psychosocial hazards. Because they are underreported more broadly. We know there is a stigma associated with mental health issues. We know psychosocial hazards are subjective and less visible, making them challenging to manage. And we know there is a lack of awareness or understanding of what constitutes a psychosocial hazard. So what we're seeing in other industries in relation to workers' compensation data is that the psychological injury claims are 4 times more expensive than a physical injury claim. We see people who have psychological injuries taking more time off work. Sometimes they never return to the workforce, and the cost to the employer is a lot higher. And where we're ending up in other industries is that psychosocial hazards are the 4th largest claim, and that's been increasing over the last 10 years. So as we're seeing physical injury claims decreasing, we're seeing psychological claims increasing. And the cost to employers is significant when it comes to those complaints. Vulnerable workers, and I've spoken a little bit about vulnerable workers in relation to these particular industries, they face a higher risk of occupational incidents and ill health, and they need extra support. And a few key areas to focus on include comprehensive induction training. We need to encourage open reporting, and we need effective supervision. And at WorkSafe, we publish a range of material on our website, so please jump on and have a look if you'd like some information in relation to vulnerable workers. So what do you do when you're exposed to an uncontrolled hazard in your workplace? I want to just reiterate what to do if you're exposed to that uncontrolled hazard. Firstly, let your employer know. That's got to be step number 1. When we assess psychosocial hazards and our inspectors go into a workplace, what they're looking at is your system of work. Because work health and safety legislation is based on risk, it doesn't matter whether or not there has been bullying, It doesn't matter whether or not there has been, well, it matters in a sense, it doesn't matter to us because what we look at is your system of safe work. And if there are things missing from that system that result in a risk eventuating, then for us, we'll look at how to manage that from a regulatory perspective. And that may be that we proceed to an investigation. It may be that we use one of the tools available to us, such as a prohibition notice or an improvement notice. All incidents, it doesn't matter how big or small they are, should be reported, and all PCBUs, person with control of a business or undertaking, should ensure that they have mechanisms in place for their employees to make complaints. And once that complaint is made, you must take action. You don't have the opportunity to sit back. You must conduct a risk assessment, and that is the best. The risk management process is the best way. Ensure that you apply the hierarchy of controls. If you take no action and a subsequent incident occurs, you could be breaching the WHS Act, and that's something we don't want to see. If all of the internal processes fail, then you can report your concern to WorkSafe ACT via our website, and you can do that anonymously. Safe and healthy workplaces for all workers in all workplaces means everyone can go home safely and healthily to their loved ones after work. And that's our aim at WorkSafe ACT. And this morning I'm asking you to commit to making that your aim as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacqui. And as I mentioned, if you've got questions, which I have a few from Jacqui's talk, please hold them till we get to our panel discussion. Don't forget them. Now, our next speaker is, in charge of the safety and wellbeing of over 100,000 employees. And when I think of a team, it's quite a large team. We're talking of the retail industry. Of course, James Benson is the head of safety for Coles Supermarket. Now, he's worked in large multi-site, multinational businesses in Australia and globally as an experienced leader in safety. And he's going to share what he's learnt over those years of managing enormous teams in enforcing, I guess, safety. But you can only, I'm sure James can only deal with one side of the equation there, which is the staff, because you don't really have control over the other side of the counter, which is the customer. So please give James Benson a warm welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thanks to Jacqui and her team for inviting me to participate today. As I was introduced, my name's James Benson. I'm head of safety for Coles Supermarkets, so pretty big organisation. Today's discussion is very topical and front of mind for us as an organisation, particularly when it comes to customer aggression and violence and the associated psychosocial risks. But before I share some of the reality of what our team members are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, I thought I'd just contextualise it and give you a bit of a view of what Coles looks like as a business. So we have over 100,000 team members. We've got a very diverse demographic of people from lots of different cultural backgrounds. Proudly, we're one of the biggest Indigenous employers in Australia. People ranging in ages, genders. We've got people who've worked for us for over 50 years, but at the same time, staff turnover sits at about 30%. So it's a challenging environment. So when you add all that into the mix, it's a relatively complex business, but our team members are at the heart of our operations, and their physical safety and mental wellbeing is our number one priority. I'm sure I don't have to tell anyone in this room about the current cost of living crisis. That must be the buzzword around Canberra, I would imagine. But we didn't really foresee the impact that this would have on the mental and physical safety of our team members. With cost of living comes theft, and with theft comes undesirable customers, unfortunately. And we do recognise this is not just a problem for Coles, but more broadly as an industry, and so I think that's really positive to have these sorts of engagements. I guess coming out of the back of COVID, where it was customer aggression and violence because of panic buying, we're now sort of stepping into the cost of living crisis, which is another challenge for us. So our team members face acts of aggression and violence on a daily basis. They get verbally abused, they get pushed, punched, spat on, indecently assaulted, and generally just disrespected. Luckily from a relatively small cohort of customers, but that is the reality of working at Coles as a frontline retail worker. And as has been alluded to, we've got a lot of very young, my daughter's 15, she's mad keen to get a job in Coles, so we've got a lot of people coming through the ranks who this is going to be their first job, and so they're sort of particularly vulnerable to this space. Obviously these types of behaviours are completely unacceptable. So as a business, we've had to face into how we pivot our resources and bolster the controls that we have across the business to, one, try and prevent these sorts of incidents in the first place, and then secondly, have adequate control measures in place to deal with them when they occur. Coles now has a dedicated cross-functional working group which monitor these incidents really closely, and we develop strategies on how to improve our team members' safety. Just some numbers for you, I guess year on year, and I don't think Coles would be special in this respect. We've seen about a 40% increase in threatening situations. We call them threatening situations, customer aggression, violence, one and the same thing. And probably more concerningly, over the last 6 months, we've seen a really significant escalation in weapons-related incidents, particularly knives. People picking a bottle or a can off the shelf and having a crack at somebody. So, unfortunately, it's not getting any better despite our best efforts. And I think whilst the sort of macro environment is challenging from a financial point of view for a lot of people, it's going to continue in this way. When we started facing into customer aggression and violence, it was really important for us as a business to base our decisions and our investments on risk and not just adopt a sort of cookie cutter approach, which we couldn't really do anyway from a commercial perspective. So to that end, we've developed a risk profiling tool which ingests a whole lot of different variables that are known to be good risk indicators for customer aggression and violence. These are things like the level of theft in stores, the number of threatening situations that are reported, things like proximity to train stations, affluence, whether the shop's in a shopping centre or in a standalone area. So this tool allows us to rank our stores from highest to lowest in terms of their risk profile, and then we effectively focus our controls on the high risk cohort. Excuse me. We run this risk profiling tool periodically because, as you would know, it's a very highly dynamic area. Things shift all the time. So, the types of controls we put into our stores, probably we do things pretty simply in Coles. We like to do things in threes. So, we've got soft controls, harder controls, and then we've got an overlay of technology. So when I talk about soft controls, it's things like face-to-face de-escalation training, having covert and uniformed guards and changing that mix-up all the time, constantly communicating to team and team talks and sharing some of the incidents. We had a really significant and nasty incident in New South Wales where a team member thought they were doing the right thing and was trying to stop a customer who was going to steal some product from leaving the store, and it looked quite innocuous. They got pushed over in our self-checkout areas, and he ended up with a significant brain injury and sort of life-changing injuries. So being able to share those without traumatising people, it does sort of bring home why we take a pretty hard line on the right behaviours, and for us, no basket of or trolley of goods is more important than somebody's safety, so we do not want anyone to engage or stop or touch or try and prevent somebody from leaving a store with goods. And unfortunately, the thieves, the shoplifters know that, and so they pretty much walk in and out of our stores with impunity now. The second bucket is more along the hard controls space, so that's where we talk about personal duress devices, body-worn cameras, perimeter alarms and headsets for communication. Body-worn cameras is one that we are continuing to roll out, and you'll probably see more of them in our stores. It seems to be one of the more effective controls in terms of preventing something from escalating. We did have concerns initially that it might agitate customers because you have to literally say, I'm about to start filming you. We've actually found that's not the case, and interestingly, in some of the scenarios, we've had customers who probably have had a bad day and you don't know what's going on in somebody else's, outside of somebody's life, come back in once after and apologise for their behaviour. So they're probably not the sort of customers we're really concerned about, but the body-worn cameras is definitely something you'll probably see more of. The duress devices is a really useful device which for people working in isolation. So, for example, our online delivery drivers or our bakers who go into stores really early in the morning, it gives them a triple tap on a smartwatch type device, gives them direct access to emergency services should they need it. And then the third bucket is the overlay of technology, which is designed to prevent or deter loss and theft. There is a really clear correlation between theft and threatening situations. I think 30 to 40% of incidents that become customer aggressive and violence stem from the fact that someone's trying to steal something. So if we're able to keep those undesirable people out of our stores, it reduces the risk significantly for the team. The downside is where you, and I'm sure you guys will have seen if you shop at Coles, you know, there's some of the technology at the self-checkouts in terms of bottom of trolley. There's lots of AI technology and good stuff happening in that space. But what it does is it makes it hard for people to steal, and they just choose not to steal from us and they go and steal from somebody else. So it sort of moves the problem, and probably, unfortunately, for some of the smaller retailers where they don't have the same sort of investment capability as what Coles or Woolies might do, it's going to continue to be a challenging space. So that's a quick summary of what we're seeing from a customer aggression and violence space, and it's a good segue into our sort of holistic mental wellbeing plan and how we support team members who are exposed to psychosocial risks in the workplace. We take an integrated approach to providing a psychologically safe workplace, and it can be again broken into three elements. So we talk about protect, promote and respond. Protecting is the first element, and it's all about preventing psychological harm. The promotion is the second piece, which is around encouraging and promoting positive mental health and wellbeing. And then the response is that where you want to have least of your activity, probably, but a lot of organisations have most of their resources put there. It's like the EAP, it's responding to the incidents after they've happened and supporting that recovery. So when I talk about protecting, as in preventing psychological harm, our Coles safety care system integrates psychosocial safety throughout the business. So we look at things like our engagement surveys, our risk assessments, job task analysis. We integrate psychosocial risk into change forums across other functions within the business. So we're constantly educating the rest of the business to understand, be able to identify and address psychosocial hazards. And that's really crucial to make sure that risks like fatigue and workload are factored in any decision making which have the potential to impact team members. And key to this is obviously consultation with our team. The second element around promote is all about programs to foster positive mental health. In Coles, we've got a pretty long-standing relationship with the Resilience Project. We have EAP services, including team members' access to things like financial services or advice and nutritional programs. We run a lot of campaigns like Safety Week and Wellness Week. And then third is the response piece. So that involves a lot of mental health training for leaders, campaigns like Are You OK Day, which is coming up in a week or two's time, and using our other support programs to upskill our leaders to be able to support their team when they need it. So that concludes my short presentation, and look, I'm happy to answer questions during the panel or the Q&A session after, or if you want to grab me after the session to hear more detail about the initiatives. But in closing, I hope you can see Coles is taking a really proactive approach to psychosocial risk because, as I said, our team members are at the heart of our organisation, and without them, we don't have a business. So their safety is our number one priority. Thank you.
Thanks so much, James. Our next speaker is Amy Sidney. Amy is a Special Counsel of Employment and Litigation at MV Law, and she is an experienced employment lawyer that advises employees from all industries, as well as businesses, on the size of matters relating to interaction between employers and their employees, and has worked with work health and safety within this space. So please give Amy a warm welcome.
Thank you for that, Lish. And thank you, Jacqui, for having me here, Jacqui and the team. I'm very honoured to be here and speak to you all today. I would also like to acknowledge the custodial owners of the land on which we meet, the Ngunnawal people, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. And thank you very much to Auntie Violet for the wonderful, thank you for the welcome to country. So I'm here with sort of two hats. I am a lawyer and I have been for almost 20 years. But I started my career in retail shortly. For a short time, my very first job was at a local supermarket in one of the suburbs in Canberra, out in Belconnen, where I had a fabulous time working with my girlfriends on the weekends, but quickly went into hospitality. I did my work experience in Year 10 at the Hyatt Hotel, and when I took a gap year between Year 12 and university, I decided I wanted to work full-time in hospitality. So I went and worked in one of the Italian restaurants. Some of you may remember Cafe della Piazza in Garima Place. And so I worked there and loved it. But I studied law. I wanted to be a lawyer. I studied law, and yes, I am one of those people who started in hospitality and went into a different job. But the difference for me is I started in hospitality, went into law, and went back to hospitality. I left law. I actually am from MV Law, but am what they call a boomerang. I started with them when they were Meyer Vandenberg around about 17 years ago, and progressed to senior lawyer there in a few years, and then decided to leave so I could have babies. And the reason why I was able to do that with hospitality was because my family, I was lucky to have a hospitality family who owned a business, or two businesses at the time, in Canberra, Parlour Wine Room and the Knightsbridge Penthouse. And I was able to work with my family and have my children with me at the same time, which was a really fabulous honour and experience, and I was very lucky to be able to do that. But look, I have come full circle and come back to MV Law with the experience that I've got of assisting my family to nurture and protect and work with over 100 employees at any one time across the three businesses, which also included the L&P towards the end. And in my experience, I look back now and realise that in my experience I did suffer from some psychosocial risks myself. Thankfully, I was able to work through those with the support of my family and friends and the people around me. But it's very, very important. I saw some of those psychosocial risks or experienced them from actually the top down. When it wasn't so common, you didn't really even hear about bullying, let alone psychosocial risks. But some of the bullying behaviour, I believe, came from people above me, and together, the staff together would sort of band together to sort of support each other around those issues. And it was very different moving into my family's business, where my powerhouse of a sister, my little sister, was really an amazing employer and really showed great respect for her employees. I often say employees are the best and worst of every business. They're the worst because the issues that can arise are far-ranging, and they can be time-consuming and difficult to manage. But at the same time, particularly in retail and hospitality, you really can't do business without them. And so it's really, really important to make them aware of how important they are and to give them the respect they deserve, and also assist them in difficult times. I have seen my sister walk up to a very regular customer, very high up in a prominent business in Canberra, who has spoken disrespectfully to one of her staff members and told that person to leave the business and never come back. And so putting those employees before the business, I guess in a way, or the fact that she could make money off this person was really important. She didn't care about that. She cared about making sure that the environment was safe for her staff, because her staff were number one. And I know that the difference between an employer who protects, nurtures, respects their employees and an employer who doesn't is staff retention and absolute respect back from those employees, and the employees would do almost anything for her because of the way she treated them. So now that I've sort of come full circle, I did some work in government, left the family business when it became a little bit too much. It's very, I always say, and I like seeing CVs come across my desk where a person has started off in retail or hospitality. I think that every person should have a service job in their career history, because it gives you, although it can be challenging, very, very challenging to deal with some people on the other side of the counter, it also can give you the strength to deal with difficult people and also to feel empathy for those staff members when you're actually the one sitting at the table being served. And it gives, I feel like it gives people a really well-rounded ability to be in the world. So they're not just book smart when they come into work for us. They understand how to manage people, how to deal with people. And in my profession, I think that's almost 50% of the job, being able to connect with the client when they first come in and be able to really empathise with their situation and listen to them, and be on the same level and understand what they need is really, really important. Of course, it's important to know the law as well, but to be able to connect with them and make them feel comfortable that you've got their back is really, really important. And I think that human interaction, the ability to understand different people and how to manage different people or deal with them in a way that really connects with them, is something that is undervalued or not known about what you can actually gain from a career in retail and hospitality. So looking for those people coming across the desk in terms of employment, that have that sort of varied career. Usually it's at the start of the career while they're at uni or before, but that's really important for us at MV Law. So I did do a stint in government. I worked for the Attorney General's area of the ACT government, so legislation, policy and programs, helping the Attorney General to develop legal policy around some pretty important issues in his portfolio. And then went into the ACT government solicitor and ended up specialising in employment law there. And so with that, I was able to bring my experience as an employer myself into that, and solely we were working for the employer. It was advising the directorates, etc., for the ACT government in relation to employment issues. But now that I've come back to commercial law, I'm really loving it because I don't have to choose between the employer and the employee. So we get to manage the work that we do, not by whether you are the employer or the employee, but by whether or not we have the capacity to manage, to deal with your case. So it means that I can look at the aspects of the legal issue from both sides. And I know that James, for example, is the employer and assisting his staff to manage their psychosocial hazards. What I feel really honoured about my job is that I get to assist employees in relation to all the issues that they come to me with, but I also do get to assist employers, and sometimes it is about guiding them through this maze of psychosocial hazards and the regulatory framework around that, and being able to influence them in the way that they manage their employees and put their systems of work in place. So this term, as Jacqui said, psychosocial hazards, and I think James mentioned this to me this morning, it's a term that a lot of employers and employees were like, what is that? And my understanding is that that is why there has been this big push, because the responsibility on a PCBU, person conducting a business or undertaking, in the Work Health and Safety Acts across Australia, which are largely uniform, has always been, the primary duty of care has always been to protect the physical and mental health of the staff, of the workers. But my understanding is that industry has really struggled with this concept of how do I protect the psychological health of my staff members? It's easy for me to see that there's a spill on the floor and I need to clean it up. That's a physical hazard, a physical risk. And so I think that ties into what Jacqui was saying, in that the prevalence of reporting of physical risks, physical harm, has been much higher in the past, and now you're seeing a bit of a shift, and I'm seeing it in my work. All of the matters that have come across my desk in the last year that relate to potential injury to staff members have been psychosocial risks, not the physical risks. And I think one of the reasons could be that, you know, there has been this push by all of the WorkSafe organisations across Australia, including WorkSafe Australia, and these codes of conduct that came in November last year. And so a recognition or an assistance for the employers to say, this is what it is and this is how you can manage those risks. So if the employers in the room and the employees have not been to see the ACT code of conduct that was released in November last year, go and look at it. It's not small. Take it to bed and you might read it over a few nights. But it is a really great manual to assist you to understand how you can manage those risks. It's easy to read. It's a long read, but it's not difficult to read. And WorkSafe ACT has a really fabulous website as well, with fact sheets and all sorts of things to assist with that as well. And so I often do encourage my employer clients to go to WorkSafe ACT to have a look at that, because it's really, really great. It's a really great tool to help you with those, with planning for your business and for assisting your employees. Look, lastly, what I'd like to just talk about is what I've seen in psychosocial risk. And I think, look, I look back, I think maybe I was subject to it myself. I've seen friends around me subject to it. I did a stint in London managing wine bars when I took a bit of a break from uni. And one of my housemates worked for Gordon Ramsay. And he is a Kiwi, very tall, had these long, massive dreads, beautifully tanned, came to London, so excited, and he had this job at, being a chef for Gordon Ramsay. And within about a month, he was just a shadow of himself. He was just pale and gaunt, really tired, would get up when it was dark, come home when it was dark, was not able to take leave. If he said he was feeling unwell, he would get abused for that and told that he was not strong enough to be at work, and so he would get himself up and go. Thankfully, he didn't last long there. He decided to leave, and he's now thriving with his own business. But that was 20 odd years ago. Now I fast forward to now, and I'm still seeing some of those things come across my desk now, some like different issues, but they're still happening. I even received a text message from my cousin the other day saying she wanted to come down from Queensland to see us in Canberra across the long weekend, but she's not sure if she can come because she's being made to work the weekends, every weekend. Now, this is a woman who works in hospitality and she's been in her job for a long, long time. I'm about to tell her that I know a really good employment lawyer who might be able to help her out. But what I'm saying is it was prevalent 20 years ago, it's still prevalent now, and we just have a really big responsibility as employees to call out the risk, but as employers to make sure that we manage those risks properly, because Jacqui did point out in hospitality in particular, there's a really young cohort, and I think that the responsibility that the employers have for their young workers is so big and heavy and really, really important. So reach out to organisations like WorkSafe, go to their website, read the code. The code is not mandatory, but I do tell my clients who are employers that it is a really good guide, and it is a guide that will be used by the courts to determine whether a breach has actually occurred. So download it, have it as on your favourites, read it. It's a way that it can really help you in your business. So thank you very much for having me, and I'm open to questions in the panel. So thanks.
Thank you, Amy and James and Jacqui. The experience that you three have brought already, I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Now, we'll take a 5-minute break or so you can go out and get a cup of tea. You'll notice that there is merch on the table, not just posters that's good for putting up in the workplace, but please, there's notebooks. I want questions because I've got so many, I don't want to dominate it at all, but please go and grab a cup of tea, eat your fruit break officially, and come back in about 5 minutes and we will kick off the panel. And a big round of applause for our fabulous guests. Cue music. That's right, I just thought. I might just get you to take a seat again. We cleared out everyone from the tea, coffee area. Do a swoop, scoop, sweep. The silence from that very calming music so early in the morning to such a wonderful crowd. Now's your chance to ask questions of our three fabulous guests. And I was just speaking with James and Amy over the break, and I found out that James is not just responsible for the safety of the 100,000 people under Coles' employment within the supermarkets, but also any customers that are in the supermarkets as well, which just blows my mind. And then Amy's experience on both sides of employment law, both running a business, working in hospitality, and then now as a lawyer advising people, has a wealth of experience. And then Jacqueline Agius, our Work Health and Safety Commissioner here in the ACT. So questions in abundance. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we will come to you with... Oh, Auntie Violet, she's got to go.
I've got a question.
You don't have to.
I've had to ring Kevy 15 times to get out of that bed to go to school. I've got a question for you, Jack. My granddaughter used to work at Macca's, and you talked about that young girl that she had to take that coffee out to that taxi driver. Well, my granddaughter come home once. She doesn't work there no more. She's moved on and much older now, but she used to talk to me about older men that used to drive through the drive-through and how they spoke to 14, 15, 16-year-old young girls, and my granddaughter, one of the experience asked was by an older man that was old enough to be either her uncle or her father. She was only 15. When are you going to come out with him? When we're going to set up a date? And I'm just wondering, and still have concerns, but my granddaughter no longer works there. For the young women that work there now, all men, what a security or how have they got any training for those young people how to deal with these older men or how they speak to them?
Thanks for your question, Auntie Violet. Firstly, I would say that we need to start thinking outside of the box when it comes to safety. One of the things that COVID taught us is that we can prioritise safety above everything else, and if we do, we can find solutions. The one that comes to mind in relation to that particular example, Auntie Violet, is that all the PCBU needs to do if that happens in their workplace is to substitute the staff member. So instead of having women in an isolated space where they can receive comments like that from customers, they could put a different person in that isolated space. So you substitute the people. Instead of having a woman there, you might have a manager. Instead of having a woman there, you might have a young man who isn't going to have those comments, because the things that you're looking at in an example like that is the isolation, no one else there to support, no one to witness, no one to hear what's happening. So the worker must also ensure that they're reporting to their employer that something is occurring.
Can I just open that up though, Jacqui, and put it to James, because James, you were mentioning how you have to do a lot of, not surveillance necessarily, but you are recording and recording interactions. How does that work in that situation? Because you're both relying on the footage rather to try and combat it.
Yeah. So I guess one of the challenges that we have as a business is actually making reporting easy for our team members. We're a very fast-moving business. Everything's measured down to the minute in terms of REM for stores. So any additional task that we ask our team to do can prolong their day, I guess. But we rely on the data, and we're really encouraging our team to make sure they report. There's a system called Aura, which we use with the police, so any theft-related incident gets reported and put into their database, helps them prosecute. And then we've obviously, through our incident management system, it's as simple for the store manager or leadership team member to pick up the phone, log a call to say such and such has happened, and then that flows into our system, and we generate weekly reports, etc.
And cameras, like I imagine, Auntie Violet, like if you're in the drive-through, that's all recorded. Do people use recordings when they're litigating? Is that a deterrent or?
Look, I think to some people it would be a deterrent, but maybe not to the people you need it to be a deterrent to. It is lawful for recording to happen in a workplace under certain sort of regulation, etc. There's certain things that have to be in a person's contract in order for workplace surveillance to take to be happening in the workplace. But certainly, when you see those signs around from the public's point of view with CCTV camera and that sort of thing, that is definitely lawful, and those things can be used when in a court case. One of the things I was thinking, Auntie Violet, and I don't know whether your Grandy has any opportunity to encourage the workplace to do this, but you'd think that, I mean, the interactions with the people in the drive-through are through those headsets. And if you've got another person in the business who's actually listening in, one of the managers who can actually call out that behaviour at the time it's happening. I think, anyone going through a drive-through would not expect that you'd have two people listening. But imagine if, you do say something disrespectful to someone and then another voice comes over and says, "I'm sorry, but we're not serving you. You need to drive straight through and leave."
The window.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So look, it's difficult.
And I know if Peter Miller were here, one of the things that Peter would say is, let's look at the way the workplace is set up and whether or not we can change the way the workplace is set up. So it could be that everything is electronic rather than having the ability to talk through the drive-through. So it might be that they put an electronic system where they order their food over the electronic system, they move on to the next window. I mean, we have cashless card payouts in supermarkets. They could have a system like that, and then when they pick up their food, there's a window, there's no ability to talk, and the food's handed over. So that's what I mean when we say let's look outside of the box. How can we change that system so it becomes a safer one?
I find it really interesting, and please raise your hand with a question, but so often on Talkback Radio, this is a really hot topic on ABC because we talk about both the importance of getting out and going out shopping as a social interaction, really important that people see other people and are part of our community. When you go out and engage in business, go out to support local business, give employment to young people by having someone do those jobs, but yet there's that real tension with it. How do you see that going ahead in terms of the technology, James, but also the social risks of not being out and about, of not interacting with people?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a move to self-sufficiency, and I think it's about customer choice. Like if you look at some of a lot of our stores are moving to not just the small basket checkouts, but you can check out your own trolleys. I don't know the exact percentage, but there's a lot of people who choose not to engage. Having said that, during COVID, supermarkets were probably particularly Melbourne, was one of the only places you could go and actually talk to someone. So that sense of connection was really important. I think from a retail perspective, self-sufficiency is going to continue to increase. It is obviously, that's limited I'm talking from a supermarket's point of view, I guess. I'm not sure how it would work in a hospitality type of environment. And it's probably not why you go to a restaurant or a cafe, right? You sort of want to go and talk to your barista and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I had an experience the other day with one of those QR codes on a cafe table, and it took me forever to order for myself and my family. My husband left because he was getting frustrated and came back and said, "You're still going?" And then I realised I missed out on a milkshake for one of the kids. And so I just went, I said to the waitress, "Can I just go and order that up the front, please?" She goes, "Oh yeah, that's fine." And up there, order back, I said, "That is so much easier. It's so much nicer to just deal with a person." So yeah, it's sad. It's sad that like a lot of those things are, you think about it from an efficiency point of view. So you think about Coles and Woolworths saving money by having those self-checkouts where the customer's doing the work for themselves. But not many people would think, well, that's actually also a safety mechanism because you only have one person, one or two people in that area who could possibly get abused. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and as James said, I think you said 40% increase in customer aggression over this, cost of living crisis.
One thing I didn't mention was, pleasingly, where we've put all the controls in our stores, like the high-risk stores where we focus our controls, we're seeing the rate of increase is lower than what we're seeing in the rest of our fleet. So at least we know that we are making a difference with some of the control mechanisms we're putting in place.
Sorry, just on those self-checkouts, what sort of risk assessment did you do for the psychological damage to the customer who has to use the things?
Well, as I said, it's about customer choice. So hopefully we've got an option there for you to go use a main lane and engage with a... Yeah.
Hi everybody. Thanks for the great talk today. What I'm hearing and from my experience, I feel that workplace abuse is not new. It increasing, agree, because people more aware, people talk about it, people reporting, and we have tools to help others, but it's not new. I'm in Australia for 22 years, came as student, so did hospitality a bit. While we're talking this complex scenario, I feel for employer as well. They have a responsibility. The business people here, you will know how hard it is to run a business. You want to do the right thing. There is a lot of factors. COVID bring us good thing, also bad thing. People working from home. Nobody going to city in lunchtime to buy lunch. Retail suffer. Business struggling to think how I'm going to keep up with my overhead cost and keep my staff and grow my business. I have to family to look after in back end. So they are under pressure as well. You have to understand the whole picture. I have sympathy for them, but today I like to speak as an employee. Sometimes women, and I'm talking for women today, we don't speak out and we compromise because we feel if we speak out, it would be career limiting. The shift I'm getting, by raising my voice, I won't get that shift. It will limit my income. It will impact my family. So we got to discuss it somehow. Raising voice is important, or I just feel this is another day. Tomorrow will be a better day. It would be okay. But in reality, I do talk to other people. What I feel one day is okay. If it's happened again and again because somebody didn't raise it, problem is still there and not being addressed is still there. If not that person, another person will suffer. And it does impact our emotional status of our mind, right? We don't feel go to work. Sometimes there is abuse and not good environment because lack of experience, staff don't have skills, not lot of learning opportunity, do understand. But I feel if you see somebody suffering and not raising, it's not they don't have courage. They probably want to say, but they have other things impacting. It is complex. I don't have solution to this today. But I feel like we have to work together, maybe be a support to the person and raise to management, making sure, it doesn't impact the person that he is out of employment, he or she.
Yep.
It's my perspective. I don't have a specific question, but I feel is the awareness, educating other people, give training and skills, because employee, they are to work and help, and business people or employer need this workforce and have a stable workforce to grow. So it goes hands in hand. That's all. Thank you.
It's a really great comment. Thank you. And so succinctly put, thank you for sharing that. And I wonder if anyone would like to comment on
I think you've touched on the complexity in workplaces and you've raised a number of things. So firstly, you're absolutely right. It is the obligation of the person with control of the business or undertaking to ensure that their staff are safe. That obligation sits in the Work Health and Safety Act. One of the things that, examples that I use when I speak with employers is, why don't you drink and drive? And if we ask that question, why don't you drink and drive, we hear a number of responses. We hear responses like, because I may get fined, because I don't want to lose my licence. And some people say, because I don't want to kill or injure anyone. And I would say that's the most important thing. And so when I'm speaking to employers, I ask them to take that into consideration when they're thinking about the safety of their workers, because we wouldn't ask a police officer not to issue a fine to us for drink driving, or to take action against us for drink driving. So it's really important that we ensure that we follow the law. There is a section in the Work Health and Safety Act which allows us as WorkSafe to take action against the employer if we determine that they have taken adverse action against their employee for raising a work health and safety matter. And that's something that sits as a protection for workers who raise issues with their employer. And I think I'll just leave it there and give others the opportunity to comment.
Thanks, Jacqui. Yeah, that was a really great comment you made. Thank you very much from both perspectives. And I definitely am with you on how difficult it is for employers as well. And having, been one, and in the hospitality industry, it's such a tough industry from all aspects, including the safety of your staff. Just to expand on what Jacqui said, there is also, under the Fair Work Act, a general protections regime for all employees that are covered by the Fair Work Act. And the Fair Work Act doesn't cover every single employee, but it does cover every single employee in the ACT. And that is a protection against adverse action for exercising a workplace right. So there are certain protections in the Act, including that one. There's also one where a person can apply to the Fair Work Commission for a stop bully order. And one of the prerequisites to that is that the person is still in the business. And so that's a way for the Fair Work Commission to help the employer and the employee to work through the issues. Now, it's not used very often, as you can imagine, and it's one of those mechanisms where a lot of employees come to me and say, I can't possibly do that. I'm not going to take my employer to the Fair Work Commission and expect to still work there. So it's one of those very sort of soft mechanisms. It's not used very, very much. So really it's about a conversation, and one of the first questions I ask my employee clients is, what do you want? Do you want to stay there or do you want to go? And let's think about, because if you want to stay there, we need to talk about the mechanisms to help you stay there in a safe environment. If you want to go, we want to see if we can manage that in the way that is most advantageous to the employee, and that means also protecting their career. So it's a very difficult fine line you walk, but important for the, as I said in my talk, the employer to protect and nurture their staff and let them know that they do have a voice and that they are going to be heard and helped in that situation, and that equals staff retention, and one of the things that you mentioned. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And you highlighted just the stress between the business having to operate and the staff having to be there. Thank you. I think, unfortunately, we've run just about to time. If you've got a quick question. No, fire away.
Hi, I have a question sort of directed at all of you generally. So I think one thing that we've sort of been dancing around a little bit is definitely the impact of casualisation in retail and hospitality on sort of people's, I guess, ability to raise these kinds of issues. I know that even when I was 16 and I had a physical injury in the workplace, I was too scared to ask for workers' compensation because I was afraid I would lose my job. And I think that is compounded by those statistics Jacqui was showing, particularly around psychosocial safety. So my question for all of you is, what changes would you recommend, particularly like legislatively, to actually promote people feeling comfortable to raise both psychosocial and physical injury in the workplace, noting that, you know, we've now seen the sort of conversation opening up around paying sick leave to casuals, sort of things like that. Sort of what changes would any of you from your different perspectives recommend?
One of the things that I mentioned earlier is the precarious nature of work in the retail and food services industries results in making those workers more vulnerable. From my perspective, I'd love to see everybody directly employed as permanent part-time or permanent employees. I think that offers a level of security that isn't offered when you're a casual employee. However, even for casual employees, I would say that if you are being discriminated against in any way because you've raised a safety complaint, then there are legal mechanisms for you, and really give us a call and we'll have a chat. That's my personal view in relation to the precarious nature of some work.
Yeah, maybe from our perspective, I guess it's about culture. So, you know, I talked about the different mechanisms we have for promoting a mentally or psychologically safe workplace. So it's removing that stigma and effectively normalising psychological injuries or mental health issues the same way that we have physical injuries. And you know, if you don't have the right culture from a business perspective, it's going to always stymie that openness. But obviously, we have lots of different mechanisms. The team are able to raise issues, whether it's stop line, where it's, you know, and different escalation processes. Because in a business our size, not everyone does the right thing, and so we need those sort of mechanisms in place to make sure we do capture any of that sort of behaviour.
I won't take up too much time. I'll just mention just about the casualisation issue. There are still protections under the Fair Work Act for casuals, and so you know, it varies according to how casual you are, or whether you're a casual that has sort of systematic work. But certainly there are other protections that just apply no matter what type of work you are, like the Discrimination Act, for example. But as of yesterday as well, the regime for conversion into permanent work has been stepped up a notch, which is to employers, you know, not great news to some employers, but it really does give the employees from 6 months from now who have that sort of systematic work the option to actually say, I think I'm actually more like a permanent part-timer, and I want you to take me on as a permanent employee. And so those mechanisms are coming in place, and that's sort of come in with that last tranche of the closing loopholes too, which came into effect yesterday.
Unfortunately, I think that's all we've got time for today, because I know you all have to get on to your days at work. Can you please join me in thanking all our fabulous guests this morning?